So, hello once again, another Saturday morning to all of yous. What's good on the internet, what's good in life? I'm LI495, aka Akeem Balaam, once again welcoming you to another edition of 10 Minutes on the Clock, our Saturday recap show here on the Cash Kelly Real Sports Talk Network. Once again, hopefully all of yous had a great week and another great night, most likely, of NBA playoffs to come. And that's the first thing that I want to talk about, the recent happenings going on in the NBA playoffs. And I want to start with the Lakers and the Nuggets in that Game 6 from Denver. Come again? Kobe Bryant was playing with the flu, which of course was going to incite all the talking heads at Bristol, at ESPN and other places to think, oh, Kobe has a shot to make a statement game similar to what Michael Jordan had back in the 90s when he played in the finals with the flu. Come again? That didn't exactly happen, but believe it or not, Kobe was actually the best player on the floor for the purple and gold. Nobody else showed up. Pau Gasol was nowhere to be found. Andrew Bynum was nowhere to be found. He had no bench. He had to be feeling like LeBron James with the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's pretty much the common denominator. And the common denominator in that case would be Mike Brown. But Kobe Bryant was on an island. Denver absolutely dominated. Ty Lawson had a huge game. I believe he had 32 points in that game. And I'm going to actually make a confession. I was in Denver that night. I was in Denver to see the Lakers absolutely get their butts whooped in the 5-2-8-0 in the Mile High City by the Denver Nuggets at the Pepsi Center. You want to know why? Because after the game, I happened to spot a couple of things outside of the Lakers locker room. Here's one of the things that I spotted. I think this is the egg that Pau Gasol had laid during that game, pretty much. And oh, I also found a second thing. Here is the egg that Andrew Bynum had laid at the end of that game, because they were absolutely just nowhere to be found. So if you want proof that I was actually at that game in Denver, here's proof. Here's the egg that Pau Gasol laid, and here's the egg that Andrew Bynum laid. And that didn't sit too well with Kobe Bryant. You know, we all know that Kobe is an extremely competitive guy. He don't have no 5 championship rings for just nothing. And he was actually calling out his own players. He called out Gasol, he called out Bynum, saying that in Game 7, because now the series is tied 3-3, that now going into this Game 7, that they really need to make a statement. Gasol and Bynum got to look like a couple of Shaqs out there, got to look like Shaq and Dwight Howard, basically, in order for them to win. I think that they are going to win this game tonight. It is at 10:30 on TNT, and Meta World Peace, or whatever his name is, Ron Artest, is going to be making his return for the LA Lakers, and I think they will indeed win tonight. But Kobe calling out his teammates after that absolutely just horrendous loss to the Denver Nuggets that night, calling out Gasol and calling out Andrew Bynum, which really I'm starting to believe more and more that Andrew Bynum is once again being overrated by many in the sporting press. Moving on from that game, moving on to what happened with the Chicago Bulls and the Philadelphia 76ers. Could it have been a better ending? Doug Collins could not have scripted a better ending. Everything at the end of that game fell into place. First, the Sixers foul the Bulls' worst free throw shooter. He misses 2 free throws. And then Andre Iguodala, of all people, who Sixer fans have maligned this dude for not being a clutch player, he hits 2 clutch shots at the end. The Sixers win the game 79-78 over the shy Bulls. They win the game, they win the series 4-2, and now they get the Boston Celtics next. Show your love, as Tim Kelly would probably say. So the Sixers are moving on to the second round of the playoffs, but everything just fell apart at the end of that game for the Bulls, and the chickens, if you will, of not having Derrick Rose and not having Joakim Noah finally came home to roost, because most likely, if that was Derrick Rose being fouled, he probably would have made at least one of those shots, if not 2. Once again, the Chicago Bulls putting on their best Chicago Cubs uniforms on and actually going ahead and just collapsing down the stretch. So the Bulls are gone. The other teams are gone, of course. The Utah Jazz are gone. That happened long ago. The Mavericks are gone. The New York Knicks are also gone, as I expected. They actually got beat in 5 games. But also the LA Clippers and the Memphis Grizzlies, they're going to Game 7. And, of course, the Nuggets and the Lakers going to Game 7 tonight at Staples at 10:30 on TNT. Now, moving on from the NBA playoffs, another thing that's been on my mind recently has been Bryce Harper, Cole Hamels, and Jordan Zimmerman. What's going on with these guys? Cole Hamels, first he goes inside, throws intentionally at Bryce Harper, which he admitted that he actually intentionally threw at the young Nationals 19-year-old superstar, quote-unquote superstar. I believe he's already being propped up by ESPN and others. And then Jordan Zimmerman, the Nats pitcher, goes ahead and he responds by throwing inside on Cole Hamels when he steps up to the plate. So it seems like to me that there is a Washington-Philadelphia rivalry. I mean, Washington D.C. is only about a 1.5 minute drive from Philadelphia, and it seems like that there is a growing rivalry between the Nationals and the Phillies. But right now, if I'm the Philadelphia Phillies, I wouldn't worry too much about trying to start rivalries with other teams, or worrying about too much about the rivalry that maybe they have with the Braves, or maybe the rivalry that they have up I-95 up the Turnpike with the Mets, or down I-95 Turnpike that they're trying to build up with the Nationals. Because right now, the Phillies bullpen absolutely just it stinks. It smells. It's the worst bullpen in the league. It seems like that they just blow lead after lead after lead after lead after lead. So moving on from that as well, the problems with the Phillies bullpen, I also want to get these two stories in that have also been on my mind. The Minnesota Vikings have been going through a stadium snafu with the state of Minnesota as well as the city of Minneapolis for a while. There's been a lot of debate in the state of Minnesota, in the land of 10,000 lakes, about just how much these new digs would indeed cost, because we all know after the recent problems, especially after that snow collapse that happened with the Metrodome, that the Vikes had to get out of the Metrodome or they would be moving to Los Angeles. Well, it happened this week. Well, indeed, it did happen this week. The Minnesota House as well as the Minnesota Senate both approved a proposal which will have the Minnesota Vikings paying about 49% of the overall costs for their new stadium in Minneapolis, and the other 51% will be, I guess, combined between the city of Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota overall. But indeed, it all means one thing. The Minnesota Vikings will indeed still be the purple and gold people eaters, Minnesota Vikings, for the next 30 years. The stadium is scheduled to be opening in 2016, and another thing about this deal is that the Minnesota Timberwolves and Lynx Stadium, the Target Center, is also scheduled to be undergoing renovations as a result for this deal. So it looks like it's going to be a win-win all around, unless, of course, you live in the City of Angels in Los Angeles, because that just means another team that you can wipe off as possibly you guys being able to get. But then again, hey, you probably want the Oakland Raiders anyway, and there's still the San Diego Chargers also as well that you can probably poach away from either San Diego or the Bay Area. So hope is not lost in Los Angeles, but certainly the prolonged wait continues for NFL football to return to SoCal in LA. And also, last story I want to mention before we get out of here for this edition of 10 Minutes on the Clock, Michelle Beadle, it looks like, will be leaving her post as co-host of ESPN's Sports Nation alongside Colin Cowherd, and it looks like that she will be moseying on over to 30 Rock, to NBC. It looks like that she is going to be co-hosting Access Hollywood alongside Billy Bush, as well as getting a show on the NBC Sports Network, most likely as well. It looks like as well that she is probably going to be covering hockey, of course, since she is a huge hockey fan. So Beads leaving the four-letter network, leaving the campus at Bristol, and it looks like we'll be going to NBC. Wanted to get that story in as well. And also, she's going to be covering this year's Olympics for the Peacock in London. So those are the four stories that have been on my mind this week. NBA playoff stuff, the Cole Hamels, Bryce Harper snafu, and how it could be a precursor to a Phillies-Nationals rivalry, even though the Phillies got much bigger fish to fry, actually finding a legitimate closer for their team. The Minnesota Vikings will be staying in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, and Beadle leaving ESPN. And also, Colin Cowherd will be getting a new show as well. He will be moving into the, I believe, the 4 p.m. or the 4:30 slot, once occupied by one Jim Rome, who is now at CBS Sports. So those are the 4 stories. And once again, rate, comment, react, reply, add, and subscribe. And speaking of the Olympics, we are planning to have a lot more Olympics content here on the Real Sports Talk Network as we get indeed closer to this year's 2012 Olympics in jolly old England in London. So until next time, I'm just one guy talking about nothing. LI495, Akeem Balaam, 10 minutes on the clock. See y'all next week sometime on the internet someplace.